So here's my situation. A few weeks ago, I was sitting at my desk and I realized I hadn't seen a doctor in 3 years. And I work in corporate America, so I do have some type of health insurance benefits. So I figured I should probably schedule some checkups and make sure everything is okay, right? But after I started probing into my insurance to figure out how my coverage actually works, I ended up finding out so much that I didn't know. I found out that I was getting overcharged for some of my visits, I was missing out on a lot of savings, and I even ended up having a really bad experience with a clinic denying that a service was covered, even though I had an insurance representative on the phone advocating for me that it was. So I wanted to make this video and tell you everything that I learned. I feel like I finally understand how this stuff is supposed to work. The deductibles, the claims, and I've even experienced firsthand how difficult it can be to make the system work for you even though you're doing everything right by the books. So keep listening if you're interested. I'll try to split up this video into timestamps in case you don't want to sit through the whole video. Okay, so going back to my story, I went to the primary care provider for the first time in 3 years. Got my lab results back, and yeah, they found something abnormal from my labs, and now I need to go to a radiologist and get a scan. So I decided to call a local radiologist clinic, and when they picked up, I just asked them, hey, do you accept my insurance? They do. Great. So then I ask, is there any way to get an estimate on how much it's going to cost? She says no, she can't help me with that. She can only book my appointment if I want one. So I tell her thanks, I'm just gonna call my insurance first. I call the number on the back of my insurance card, I get on the phone with an agent, and I'm telling her what this is all about. I got a referral for a scan, I called a local place, but they couldn't tell me anything about payments in advance, so I wanted to call you and see if I could figure out how much I can expect to pay, right? And this agent was heaven sent. She gave me so much advice. It was like talking to a friend who works for insurance that actually wants to help you with insider knowledge. You know what I mean? Instead of just someone trying to get through the call. The first piece of advice that she gives me is don't ask offices if they accept your insurance. You have to ask them if they are in network with your insurance. Apparently, there is a distinction there, which I never knew, because to me, those things mean the same thing. The average person would not know that they need to use precise insurance terminology and specifically ask in-network instead of accept insurance, otherwise it could be costing them a lot of savings. So the way she explained it was that if you're going to an in-network provider, that means the doctor's office is partnering with the insurance, and because of that partnership, the service that you get is going to be discounted. So instead of a procedure costing you something like $500, it'll cost you $200 because the insurance has a negotiated rate with that provider. But sometimes clinics will tell you that they accept your insurance even if they're out of network with your insurance, because they're just saying, yeah, we're willing to run it through insurance and file a claim for you, but that doesn't mean that they have that negotiated rate that would bring your service down from $500 to $200. So by making that mistake, you could be setting yourself up for a procedure that cost $500 instead of an in-network one that would have costed $200. And if you're really catching on to what I'm saying, you could even see how it could benefit a provider to tell you they accept your insurance when they're out of network, because they could get more money from the procedure since they don't have to offer it at a discount. But you can easily do a provider search on your insurance website and check for yourself if they're in network. And also, if you are booking from ZOCDOC, I highly recommend you call the provider and make sure they're in network before you actually show up for the appointment, because I've had experiences where the site tells me that the provider is in network with my insurance, but when it comes time to the appointment, I learned that the provider no longer works there, or they don't actually accept my insurance, or even worse, they don't even see an appointment for me. So please confirm with the clinic if you're booking through ZOCDOC, because insurance companies either renew or cancel their in-network partnerships yearly. So the information on the site may be old, or it might have not even been set up properly in the first place. So that's just something to keep in mind. So then back to my call with the insurance agent. So I ask her, hey, so I need this scan. is there any help I can get from insurance? So she starts to tell me that my insurance covers 75%. And in my head, I'm thinking, that's good news. But then she tells me, since I picked a high deductible plan, that 70% coverage is only going to kick in once I reach my deductible. So if you have a high deductible plan and your deductible is, let's say, $5,000, that means you literally have to spend $5,000 of your own money towards medical services before the insurance comes in and starts assisting with 70% off future procedures. And of course, those medical services have to go through claims and be accepted for them to count towards that number. And since that counter restarts each year, it feels like something impossible to reach unless you're genuinely having the worst year of your life medically. So if you're on a high deductible plan like me, she pretty much explained that in that situation, the best help that you can get from insurance is to make sure that the clinic you book with is in-network, so that when the claim processes, the amount you owe is based on that in-network discount rate that I mentioned earlier. So in case you're wondering why I chose such a crappy insurance plan with a high deductible that limits the amount of coverage that I get, did I just choose it because it was the cheapest option? No, that's not even the reason I chose it. But the real reason that I chose it was because I wanted to open an HSA, and unfortunately, the only way to open an HSA is if you're on a high deductible plan. If you've never heard of an HSA, it's a health savings account, and it's basically a debit card that you put some of your paycheck into before your paycheck gets taxed. And we all know how brutally our paychecks get taxed. And your employer also puts free money into it each pay cycle if they participate in employer contributions. So if you're working for an employer that does contribute to your HSA, then you can get something like $1,000 of free money per year that comes from just your employer contributing to your HSA account if you have this set up. And then you can use that debit card to pay for doctor appointments, to buy sunscreen, menstrual care products, and then some other qualifying expenses as well. So if you don't visit the doctor frequently, then you can see how beneficial this type of setup is, right? You're paying a small amount to keep a basic insurance plan, and then you're racking up free money and savings to put towards future healthcare expenses. But if you need to visit a doctor frequently, then this type of arrangement works poorly for you because you'll be visiting the doctor and paying high rates, which could offset the savings you'd earned for that year. So back to my call with the representative. The other thing she tells me is, you have annual preventative services included in your insurance plan that you can get fully covered, and this includes a primary care physical. So I had no idea that I could get an annual physical and not have to pay anything. And this is not something that's specific to my insurance plan, but I did some research, and this actually goes back to the Affordable Care Act, which made it a law that most insurance plans have to cover preventative services with no out-of-pocket costs. But one of the things she told me was, if you're going in for an annual physical, well, number one, you have to make sure the provider is in network, right? We already talked about that. But number two is that you also have to make sure that the labs they send your blood work over to are also in network with your insurance. Otherwise, the lab bill is going to come back at full price. And she sent me a list of labs that are in network for me, but honestly, this made me feel like there are so many little things you need to make sure of. Because your coverage is just one mistake away from getting voided. And maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I feel like if I came into my appointment with a list of printed out in-network labs and asked the nurse if they could send my blood work to one of them, they'd just be like, no, we have our own labs. But apparently that's what you have to do if you want your lab bill to be fully covered for those preventative screenings. Okay, so the next thing the representative told me about was actually an advanced level trick. She told me about putting yourself on a payment plan instead of paying upfront, and it's actually part of a trick that will make you pay less overall. If that's something you want to set up, you have to do it ahead of your actual appointment, in case they don't accommodate it on the spot. But basically how it works is that you call them, you ask for an estimated cost, you tell them you can't afford it, and you ask them to put you on a payment plan instead because you're at their mercy and you just can't see a doctor otherwise. So they agree and you get on a payment plan, and that's actually going to buy you some time. So now you go in for your appointment, and a week or two later the insurance claim goes through, and then when you get that claim back, it's actually going to tell you the real cost that you owed for that appointment, and that's usually going to be lower than what you paid, what you would have paid up front. Then you can call the office back and say, hey, the insurance claim went through. It looks like they ended up covering more than we expected, and I need to adjust the rest of my payments so it reflects the amount the insurance says I owe. So if you see what I'm saying, when you go to the doctor's office and they ask you to pay for an appointment, the number they give you is just an estimate of how much they think you need to pay. You're not actually getting the real number of what you truly owe until an insurance claim is processed. So if you put yourself on a payment plan ahead of time, you can put off paying the full amount until the real number you're supposed to pay comes in. So that's how that trick works. And at the end of the call, she suggested I download the health insurance app onto my phone because my insurance has one. So initially I was thinking, okay, you know, they're just required to advertise the app, blah, blah, blah. But then I was thinking, why not? I'll just download it. And what I saw made me spiral. Like, I saw that my claim from the primary care provider I went to the week before was on there. And the amount the claim said I owed was 50% less than what they told me I needed to pay at the office, that I did pay at the office. So this is not my first time seeing an insurance claim, but this is my first time seeing it with eyes wide open, if you know what I mean. Previously, I just didn't have enough knowledge to know what I was looking at or how this information could benefit me. But now I realized that doctors are just giving you an estimate to pay up front, and if insurance says your actual responsibility is less after the claim processes, then that extra money you paid just stays with the doctor's office. And then the other thing that I noticed on my claim was that there were multiple billing codes attached to the visit. And if you don't know what billing codes are, those show up on your claim and they represent the specific things that were done at your appointment, and what your appointment is classified as. So your claim will give you a number like 99403, something like that, and that can represent a preventative visit for new patients. So for my visit, it was just an annual physical, just blood work, basic medical history questions, but the claim had both a new patient preventative screening, which is that annual thing that insurance fully covers automatically, but it also had a new patient office visit code added to it. So essentially, I got two codes that represent what look like the same things to me. So it was like having the free preventative visit didn't count for anything because I still got the regular visit code attached to it on top of that you would expect this type of visit to have if you didn't have a preventative screening. And the more codes that are on your claim, the more that you have to pay towards the visit. So essentially, since I had both the preventative screening and a regular office code, I still had to pay something because I had to pay for that regular office code. So despite the fact that the preventative visit was supposed to be at $0 deductible for me based on what insurance said, in reality, because the office attached an additional code to that bill, it wasn't. So point is, now I knew that I had a case to call that doctor's office back and ask for a refund. Yeah, so unfortunately, the American healthcare system is not looking out for us with our best interests in mind. So there is a burden on us, the patients, to learn about how our insurance plan works and to educate ourselves on what we can do to put ourselves in a better position. The healthcare system is a system with rules that you can learn and play back against it. And when you ask for things like refunds on overpayments, or you question why certain services that your insurance said were free weren't actually free at the clinic, you know, some people that you speak to are going to be nice and they're going to want to help you out, while other people are going to be mean and hate that you're putting anything extra on their plate. But at the end of the day, you know, you have a right to ask these questions. You have a right to advocate for yourself, and you can do it respectfully. You don't have to make a scene, you know, become a Karen or go ballistic at the doctor's office. Just be persistent and keep trying to advocate for yourself, and you'll be able to resolve things respectfully. So if there's anything that you take away from this video, let it be that you should be diligently checking that a provider is in network before your visit. You should get in touch with your insurance and be aware of services that they fully cover as part of their preventative screenings so that you can take advantage of them. Make sure that you check your insurance claims after they've processed so that you can check if what you paid up front was more than what insurance says you owe for the visit, so you can get a refund. And lastly, make sure to check the billing codes that were added to your insurance claim to make sure that they actually happened and you weren't billed for anything extra. Unfortunately, 80% of medical bills contain errors, and those errors leave you with a higher bill. And it's not a matter of just some spare change, but this amounts to hundreds of dollars that you lose out on. So I hope that sharing my experience helped you get some more awareness on how this process goes down. And please consider liking and subscribing to my channel, because I really want to make videos with some information that I think can help people. And this is my first shot at that. So if you liked it, then please let me know.